Hello, Rams family! Welcome to Rams Latest, your daily source for everything in and out of the Rams house. I'm your host, Brady Petrik. Before we get started, a quick shout out to Kalshi for sponsoring this video. Download the Kalshi app and use code FANARTSFOOTBALL to get $10 when you trade $10. And a quick reminder to like, comment, and subscribe. A little bit from you goes a long way. And now, let's get into it. Well, the wait is finally over, and football season is upon us, as the Rams suited up against the Chiefs for their first action of the preseason. And after the long wait of the offseason, the Rams did not disappoint, as they came roaring out of the gates with a host of new players giving a wide array of impressive performances. From quarterbacks to running backs, tight end units to special teams units, there was a lot to be excited about from what the Rams showed us this past Saturday, and surprisingly little to be worried about. It was a dominant performance, where the Rams notched the only 2 touchdowns of the day on their way to a 20-12 victory. Today we're going to dig into the highlights as we size up what the Rams can take away from this game as they roll forward towards the regular season, starting in the same place as the game itself, with the first team offense. As promised last week, Stetson Bennett led the charge for the Rams to start the game, stepping up under center for the first 2 drives. He led the first team snaps and looked good, if not great, while distributing the ball to a crowd of mostly fresh faces, going 4 for 6 on the day with 38 passing yards. His connection with Xavier Smith looked strong, as Smith was the most seasoned receiver to see action during the game, and Bennett leaned on their familiarity to get the ball moving early. With the amount of action he was seeing on both first and second team drives, it seemed that Smith has solidified his position as the number 4 receiver behind Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and Jordan Whittington, none of whom made appearances on the grass in the matchup. Among the newer receivers on the first team, CJ Daniels was the most welcome addition, even if his production with Bennett was minimal. I was glad to see him earn a spot in the starting lineup given what I saw out of him in training camp, and his skills transferred nicely to the playing field. On a failed touchdown attempt for Bennett, Daniels ran a route that had him employing great footwork and timing to get available across the middle. That route was ultimately neglected in favor of a look towards Max Clare, but Daniels was very available and easily would have come away with the score if Bennett had looked his way first. Speaking of Max Clare, he made the biggest impression of all the tight ends on the first team today. He had a great looking touchdown pass thrown his way that came up just short of a score, where Bennett threw a very grabbable ball above Clare's head that got knocked away by some sharp defensive play from the Chiefs. The pass was almost intercepted, but with the way that both players got their hands on it, Clare might have been able to body his way into coming down with the ball, and that would have gone a long way in establishing his reputation as a dog and keeping him floating on top of the depth chart. I'm not worried that he isn't going to make the cut or anything. I mean, he was a second round pick after all, but it would have been a dominant show if he had pulled it off, and probably would have commanded the biggest headlines coming out of the game, if it weren't for a certain first round pick having one heck of a coming out party. There's no use burying the lead any longer. This was Ty Simpson's day. The controversial first round pick put a nice feather in his cap and dealt a blow to the haters with a hallmark game to start out his career for the Rams, going a surprising and truly impressive 21 of 25 for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions or fumbles, earning a passer rating of 125.0. Simpson took over every drive after the first 2, confirming that the coaching staff is planning to use these preseason games to help the rookie quarterback adjust to life in the NFL. He's already rising to meet the challenge, displaying a poise and understanding of the offensive system that goes well beyond what you would expect to see from someone in their first game. Above all, Simpson looked confident. He had to deal with a couple of gaffes that weren't his fault, like a botched snap early on and a few collapsing pockets, but he always kept his cool. Maybe the Iceberg Simpson nickname will have some staying power after all. When things went according to plan, he was able to step through his read progressions calmly and efficiently, with remarkable improvement over the sloth and hesitancy he showed even just a few weeks ago at training camp. One early play that showed his comfort in the offense came on his second drive, when he followed Max Clare, waiting for him to get open over the middle, but when Clare couldn't shake his defender, Simpson quickly looked downfield to find his other tight end Mark Redmond for a big gain. And on another earlier pass attempt, Simpson quickly switched from looking to his left to darting his eyes right moments before delivering an on-time and on-target ball to Clare. It was hard to tell whether this was a lightning-fast read switch or an intentional misdirect, but either way, it was very reminiscent of Matthew Stafford's no-look magic. I don't think any of us were expecting to see that from Simpson in his first game, let alone on his first throw. He's moving fast, on the field and with his development. Simpson made the most of his connections with his tight ends, especially Max Clare, who he found time and time again throughout this game. Left side, right side, outside, inside, Simpson just could not get enough of Clare. He was consistently Simpson's first and longest look for the majority of his pass attempts, and made the most of his opportunities, coming away with 7 catches on 8 targets for 37 yards, a number that undersells how instrumental he was in putting together productive drives. More than just a preference for a single receiver, Simpson's ability to find Clare early and often demonstrated a familiarity and comfortability with the Rams' famously intricate tight end game. The Rams are on the cutting edge of tight end development, and Simpson's ability to lean on his tight ends as much as his receivers was a strong point in his favor for being able to command this offense at some point in the near future. The impressive showing wasn't only in his mental game, as Simpson's ball placement was also on point on Saturday, as you might expect for a guy who completed 84% of his passes on the day. He was consistently placing the ball where his guys, and only his guys, could reach it, finding spaces within the orbit of his receivers that didn't require them to dive for it, but were still far enough away that defenders had no chance of getting a hand on the ball. He did an even better job of this than Stetson Bennett did, who could have used a bit of that Simpson touch on the drop touchdown pass he threw to Clare in the first quarter. Simpson's debut was pretty much everything you could hope to see from a rookie starting his first game in an NFL stadium. He executed the offense the way the Rams like it, which is a difficult task for even the most seasoned quarterback. He led the team with confidence and didn't make any easy or regrettable mistakes, which is a great first step in helping him solidify his position among his teammates at the center of the offense. He took his time to let plays develop rather than panicking, but wasn't afraid to take a quick short game when it made sense to keep the drive moving. He even notched a pair of touchdowns in the second half, though we'll touch on those more in a bit. As someone who was admittedly skeptical of the pick on the night of the draft, I think Simpson has done more than enough in his first game to earn the respect and grace of everyone who doubted his capacity as an NFL caliber quarterback. The fact that he was able to do it in his first start makes it all the more impressive. And now, a quick break brought to you by our sponsors over at Kalshi. Before the season kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. If watching this preseason game has you feeling inspired about the Rams' potential this year, there's no better place to make your predictions than Kalshi. All of us Rams fans know that it's Super Bowl or bust this season. So if you want to ride the wave and go the distance with the team, the Rams winning the #1 seed in the NFC this season is currently trading at 23% probability. So a $100 trade would get you a $413 payout if they clinch that first round playoff bye. Or if you're like me and you think the Rams are far and away the best team in the league this year, the Rams notching the best regular season record is trading at 15% probability. So a $100 trade would get you a cool $606 payout. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use code FANARCHFOOTBALL to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI. Kalshi. Trade on anything. And now, jumping back to the preseason action. It's time to run down the rest of the difference makers that we saw on the Rams offense. While it was a red letter day for the tight ends under Ty Simpson, there was one wide receiver who made a big impression on Saturday, and that was Brennan Presley. Presley jumped out to me at training camp because of how often he was lining up for special teams duty, and I figured he would probably earn his spot on the final roster as a backup, if not primary returner. Presley absolutely delivered on this front, with two stellar kickoff returns, one for 29 and one for 30 yards. He had vision, speed, and tackle breaking ability that allowed him to motor a third of the way down the field to give his offense prime field position for two of their drives. I've said before that the Rams should try to find a consistent and efficient kick returner, as the Seahawks showed us last year that a dangerous returner can swing a game all by himself, and it appears that with Presley, the Rams are the closest they've been in ages to having a real difference maker on special teams. I want to see Presley continue fielding kickoffs for the rest of the preseason, mainly because I'm convinced that with a few more tries, he'll come away with a touchdown and show the league that the Rams are once again a force to be reckoned with on special teams. As if his return play wasn't enough, Presley also led the team in receiving yards, with 58 after hauling in all four of his targets, including a 23-yard catch and run that tied Mark Redmond for the longest catch of the day. This top performance, along with his dominant special teams presence, should go a long way in cementing Presley's spot on the 53-man roster. With what he's shown so far on the field, he'll be a welcome addition to the wide receiver rotation, even though I don't expect him to see a ton of usage this season with a stacked cast ahead of him. Even still, it's a great relief to know that the Rams can still find productive role players in-house and don't have to rely on the temperamental and increasingly expensive wide receiver market to solve all their roster problems. Beyond the wide receivers, the Rams' running back room also got put through their paces. The Rams are currently rostering 6 backs, and half of them saw playing time on Saturday, with second-year Jarquez Hunter taking first-team snaps. Hunter ended up with the most carries of any back on the day with 9, and looked solid when he was able to get moving with a full head of steam. But his efficiency was buoyed by a 13-yard run that padded an otherwise subpar performance that would have averaged just 2.8 yards per carry. I'm a little surprised that we didn't see Ronnie Rivers taking snaps with the first team, given his standing as number 3 on the depth chart, but the Rams must be confident in what they've seen from him and are deciding to limit his preseason playing time, most likely to prevent injury. After Hunter, Jordan Waters was the next man up. Another second-year player, Waters had a brief stint in the UFL after being waived by the Rams last season, but he signed back up with the team again in February and is committing to his NFL career. Waters was the most explosive member of the Rams' backfield, matching his strength and size of Hunter's running style, but adding extra tackle-breaking abilities to stretch his runs further past first contact, including a blistering 26-yard run that stood out as the highest for the day for either team. With his performance in this game, I would personally choose to move Waters up the depth chart for the rest of the preseason to see what he does with Hunter's level of volume. And that might have happened if it weren't for one more Rams running back who made the biggest impact of them all. Don't say I didn't warn you, folks. Rookie undrafted free agent Dean Connors is a stud. My personal favorite new player coming out of training camp announced himself with a thunderous debut on Saturday, looking strong and fast in his admittedly limited 6 carries out of the backfield. His size and speed separate him as the most intimidating running back on the Rams roster, but even so, that's not where he shined the brightest against the Chiefs. No, his impact was as a receiver, where he scored both of the Rams' touchdowns, the only 2 in the entire game, on 2 very different play calls in the fourth quarter. The first was a dump off behind the line of scrimmage, a bailout pass from Ty Simpson that Connors carried to the house with shifty footwork and great vision while shaking off a pair of Chiefs defenders who got their hands on him. The second touchdown utilized a completely different set of skills, as Connors lined up in the backfield before running a tight receiver route across the middle and creating separation with a perfectly timed two-step stutter that allowed him to make the catch at the front of the end zone. It was more like what we saw from Devontae Adams on the goal line last season than anything from Kyron Williams or Blake Corum, and displayed a versatility that surprised even me. Connors is the real deal, with strength, speed, hands, technique, and vision. I don't expect him to be taking the starting job anytime soon for obvious reasons, but this guy is electric whenever he gets his hands on the ball. And I hope the Rams find a way to manufacture him touches, certainly during the preseason and hopefully into the regular season too. If nothing else, the Rams can be confident that they have a backup on their roster who can inspire as much fear as their starting duo. I hope he takes every running back snap next week. Well, we've run through a lot of names and a lot of stats today, so I want to put a bow on this episode by running through some risers and fallers on the Rams roster after their first preseason matchup. The first name on the list of risers has got to be Ty Simpson. The headlines coming out of Saturday's game rightfully belong to Simpson, who outshone starter Stetson Bennett with a performance that would have been good for a seasoned vet, let alone a guy taking his first ever NFL snaps. He's putting the other rookies around the league and plenty of old heads to shame this week, and his future is looking brighter than ever before. Another riser is Simpson's favorite target on the day, fellow rookie Max Clare. The first and second round picks made quite a team, and Clare is quickly distinguishing himself as a reliable pass catching option in a crowded tight end room. He made connections with both Simpson and Bennett during this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Matthew Stafford is taking notice and starts peppering him with targets as soon as he makes it into the starting rotation. The Rams have a lot of depth and talent at tight end, but they would be wise to find a way to work Clare into the first team plans. Your move, McVay. From the receiving core, no player made a bigger impact today than Brennan Presley. He had a perfect day with 4 catches on 4 targets while also leading the team in receiving yards, and that's before you factor in his exemplary special teams work. I genuinely believe that Presley did enough today to earn his place on the final roster, even if he sits out the rest of the preseason. But thankfully for us, I expect to see plenty more of him in the next 2 games. I'm most excited to see what he can do with more kickoff returns. And finally, we have to give it up for Dean Connors, the undrafted rookie out of Houston. He proved himself to be every bit as capable as I had hoped coming out of training camp, and then went the extra mile with elite receiving work in the end zone. I've seen some more spirited commentators comparing him to Christian McCaffrey, and while I wouldn't go that far after just one preseason game, he definitely showed flashes of the all-around offensive capabilities that distinguish CMC as a uniquely dangerous weapon. He has the touch. But as some players rise at each position, others must fall. Stetson Bennett had a completely satisfactory game as a 2-drive starter, but was the last quarterback on everyone's mind by the time the game ended. It's never a great look to be outshined by your backup, and there's no question who turned in the more impressive performance. I don't think he'll be losing his number 2 position as a result, but I think everybody inside and outside of the Rams facility is more comfortable with the idea of Ty Simpson taking regular season snaps than they were just a few days ago, and that's not great news for Bennett. Dean Connors brought in both touchdowns during the game through the air, which stands in stark comparison to Jarquez Hunter and his role as a momentum-dependent thumper. He was the first choice to carry the ball, but did little to impress, especially when compared to the dual threat potential that Connors showed off. I'm not sure if the Rams are planning to use Hunter in the passing game at all, but it'll be hard to justify getting him more snaps next week when Connors seems to offer more versatility and explosiveness both as a runner and a receiver. And finally, a name noticeable only for its absence, and that's Tyler Scott. Scott was another receiver who was lining up next to Brennan Presley for special teams and pass catching snaps during training camp. He exhibited a lot of similar traits to Presley, but Saturday was Presley's day, and aside from a nice bootleg route at the top of the game, Tyler Scott was pretty quiet. He has a long road to walk if he wants to stand out from the other wide receivers before the end of the preseason. Well, the first week of the preseason is officially in the books, and all I can say is, man, it feels good to be watching football again. Well, that's all we've got today for Rams Latest. I'm Brady Petrik, and until next time, go Sheep.